Many fans agree that the second Thor installment didn't live up to the promise of the first Thor. Though the action and special effects were enhanced, the story falls flat. Directed by TV veteran Alan Taylor, Thor: The Dark World is more bombastic and less human than the first entry, which was directed by Kenneth Branagh and Joss Whedon, who explored the mythology as well as the universal themes that Thor tackles. Another common complaint is that this film didn't feature enough Loki, undoubtedly the series' favorite anti-hero. And despite colossal battles with enormous stakes, it all feels disjointed and ultimately unsatisfying. Iron Man 2 seems to have the opposite problem of Thor: The Dark World. Too much talk and not enough action. In this entry, Tony Stark spends much of the film battling advanced palladium toxicity, which leads to all kinds of awkward and embarrassing encounters. The problem is that Robert Downey Jr. continues to be amazing as Tony Stark, but we don't get to see enough of Iron Man. Also, as a result of endless subplots with secondary characters, the film lacks the focus of its predecessor. Ultimately, Iron Man 2 has too much going on, leaving viewers a bit confused and unsatisfied. The Incredible Hulk manages to make amends after the misfire that was Hulk, starring Eric Bana and directed by Ang Lee. As Hulk, Edward Norton brings the right amount of melancholy to make Bruce Banner empathetic. The problem is that Hulk himself has no restraint, therefore the action sequences are just exercises in mass mayhem which eventually become repetitive. As an angry beast, Hulk lacks the depth of other superheroes, making Bruce Banner a victim of his fate rather than a hero on a mission. Still, the film does offer an improved take on the legend of the Green Giant and leaves us hopeful that his story has a future. Iron Man 3 once again finds Tony Stark disillusioned and detached as he attempts to forget his experience with the Avengers. The problem is, there's a terrorist on the loose and Iron Man has no choice but to stop him. Another problem is that before we get to the good stuff, we have to suffer through an overly talky first act. The reward, however, is Ben Kingsley's amazing portrayal of Mandarin, a supervillain for the ages. The film seems to bite off more than it can chew, which at times can be entertaining, though it is often disappointing given the standards set by the Avengers. As an origin story, Thor works since Chris Hemsworth is perfect for the part. He also owns the film when he's playing the fish out of water role. Yet, overall, the film seems to lack the appeal of the other, more developed Avengers like Iron Man. Still, the film has enough going for it that it's not completely pointless. The secondary characters like Natalie Portman's Jane Foster and Tom Hiddleston's Loki provide enough nuance to add some weight to the story of the Norse superhero. However, the film is weighed down by its 3D pretensions since the format's action sequences seem pretty routine. Captain America's First Outgoing is an interesting origin story that takes us back to 1941 when Steve Rogers enlists to fight Adolf Hitler. The special effects that reduce Chris Evans to a scrawny teen are well intended, but creepy. Thankfully, once he's given the experimental super growth serum, Evans grows into the virtuous character that we've all been waiting for. The problem is that the backstory swallows up a good chunk of screen time. Therefore, when Captain America finally gets down to business, it feels a bit rushed and improvised. Despite its flaws, the introduction of the greatest American hero is a welcome and optimistic preview of what's to come. It came as no surprise that Avengers: Age of Ultron would go all out in terms of action sequences and scale, given that it was a follow-up to a mega hit like Avengers and includes an endless list of characters. The film has astounding special effects and endless energy, but following in the original footsteps was a daunting task. After all, in the first film, the superheroes fight to save humanity, so how could they possibly top that? The answer is they couldn't, so once again, the fate of the human race is at stake. The problem is that despite being visually stunning, it is also redundant. It was hard to top the excitement of the first Guardians of the Galaxy, since seeing all these misfits packed into one superhero movie was not only a unique concept, but also a fun ride. Therefore, it is not surprising that this time around the film opted to dig a little deeper with the characters. The problem is that their inner turmoil is more exasperating than endearing. Thankfully, the story of Peter Quill, aka Star-Lord, and his father Ego, the living planet, smooths out the film's rough edges. Ultimately, though, the film lacks the originality and spontaneity of the first installment and feels a bit repetitive. Paul Rudd, like Robert Downey Jr., always brings something to the table. Given the actor's charisma, he manages the first scenes as Ant-Man, in which he must deal with his minute size charmingly. The problem, though, is that the first film doesn't have an established serious side, which makes it fun, but also a bit forgettable. As a summer blockbuster, it worked because it was light and endearing, but within the larger context of the Avengers, it leaves fans of the series wondering how Ant-Man will possibly match up with the mighty Thor, or the courageous Captain America. The biggest and most star-studded Avengers includes characters from all Marvel franchises. The result is somewhat overwhelming given the individual egos of the superheroes, not to mention the actors themselves. The writers and directors handle the challenge well by playing the clash of personalities for laughs. Yet, while the heroes are exchanging barbs, Thanos, a well-developed supervillain, is plotting destruction. Despite the excess, the film ultimately succeeds on many levels. The only problem is that Avengers Infinity War, as the name suggests, is not about resolution, so essentially the film is just a taste of what is to come. Superbly crafted, The Avengers is a solid yet not altogether great film. Perhaps it is because the film is split into two parts that don't completely coalesce. The first part gives viewers a brief look at each of the superheroes, while the second part is more bombastic and reliant on over-the-top special effects. The film is solid in that it delivers what fans expect, but is a bit short on surprises. The Avengers perceive a threat, are recruited to combat it, and then everything explodes on the screen. The best part of the film is certainly Loki, who rides an enormous dragon machine through the streets of Manhattan. A great film for fans of the genre, Captain America: The Winter Soldier is a bit complex for newbies. The spectacular action scenes are undoubtedly breathtaking, and Chris Evans of maintaining the guy-next-door approachability and likability of Cap. The film is also adept at using the superhero's awkwardness in a new world setting entertainingly. Also, the film showcases Samuel L. Jackson's Nick Fury to great effect. Though the central conflict is a bit absurd, the film is a worthy continuation of the franchise, and Evan keeps us squarely in Cap's corner. Paul Rudd as Scott Lang, aka Ant-Man, continues to be as charming as ever in Ant-Man and the Wasp. The film is a welcome break from the seriousness of other Avenger entries. It's also refreshing to see a superhero have a truly human relationship as Lang has with his daughter, Cassie. The film succeeds because it does a great job of balancing its crime story and its family comedy elements. The film is also a visual delight as Ant-Man contends with oversized Hello Kitty Pez candy dispensers and Hot Wheels cars. By focusing on a more contained story rather than an all-out showdown for world domination, Ant-Man and the Wasp makes up for a fun and endearing 2 hours. Though Doctor Strange is a secondary Marvel superhero, Benedict Cumberbatch elevates the character to the pantheon of great superheroes. The film is unique given its mind-bending visuals that recall 2001: A Space Odyssey or MC Escher. Also, the setting is much more otherworldly than anything we've seen from Marvel before, as Doctor Strange breaks through a mirror dimension, a parallel dimension where mortals are unaware of the action going on behind the scenes. Of all the entries, Doctor Strange is perhaps the most refreshing of the Avengers films, since it showcases a universe most of us are unfamiliar with. Spider-Man: Homecoming, which features fantastic special effects, sharp writing, and a terrific cast, headed by Tom Holland, who seems to truly enjoy playing the role, much more than any other actor before him. It helps that Holland exudes genuine innocence. The actor's spirited take on Spidey keeps a visually stunning film grounded. The film also benefits from a strong supporting cast, such as Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark and Marissa Tomei as Peter Parker's Aunt May, who brings plenty of humor and sass to a role that has often been played as a bit too straight-laced. Thor finally gets the film he deserves with Ragnarok. Making use of Chris Hemsworth's deft comic timing lightens the load a bit, making the character much more than a buff space god. The film also carves out a niche for Thor, who is not simply a human thrust into an armored suit. The film manages to be equal parts colorful, ambitious, and hilarious, and just when it all seems to be a bit too much to take, Thor keeps us grounded with a knowing wink. The film also makes great use of the Hulk, who, like Thor, is much more than a feat of engineering. The Guardians of the Galaxy, a bumbling band of misfits, are essentially the anti-Avengers. Despite Peter Quill's efforts to be Star-Lord, his fellow Guardians keep his ego from exploding by laughing at his pretensions. Chris Pratt does a great job of balancing brawn and genuine warmth as the hero. He is joined by a truly eccentric crew of cohorts that each make a name for themselves in this Avengers installment. It is to the film's credit that it doesn't take itself too seriously. They are, after all, according to Gamora, the biggest idiots in the galaxy. But that's what makes them fresh, fun, and completely unpredictable, which is a rarity with superheroes. Robert Downey Jr. has arguably reinvented the superhero genre thanks to his wit and comedic brilliance. In Iron Man, Downey takes Tony Stark from cartoon villain to sexy superhuman superhero. By realizing the error of his ways, Stark is able to use all of his skills and know-how to battle evil. As Iron Man, Downey is a revolution. The film takes all the cliches of superhero films and reworks them into a smart, defining character study that is as satisfying as it is dazzling. Iron Man may not be the superhero film we expected, but it's certainly the one that we needed. It is no surprise that Black Panther has been nominated for an Academy Award for Best Picture. It is indeed one of the year's best films. By taking us away from what we know and shattering every superhero cliche in the book, Black Panther succeeds on every level. Yes, the film embraces diversity and representation, but that's not its sole strength. It also has something to say, and does so within the framework of an expertly told superhero saga. Black Panther begins where Captain America: Civil War left off, when T'Challa returns to Wakanda to take his father's place as king. The audience is led into a spectacular world that is not only visually stimulating, but also eye-opening. With an impressive cast of supporting characters, who all shine in their own way, Black Panther manages to create its own universe while delivering a meaningful and inspiring film that sets a new standard for superhero sagas. As more Avengers films make it to the big screen, this list will certainly vary. For now, the series is mostly successful, and though our views take into account overall fan reactions, to each their own. Therefore, we look forward to your feedback in the comments below. Tell us which film is your favorite and which you have no plans to watch again. Also, don't forget to subscribe to The Binger for more great content like this. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you at the movies.